Return.
Welcome to the Devy Devotional Podcast, a show devoted to college prospect evaluation with a fantasy football focus. With your hosts, John Arrington, Aaron Wilcox, and Andy Starr. This podcast brings you actionable strategies and player-driven analysis for your Devy, C2C, and Dynasty leagues. Let's dive in.
Let's dive into the 2027 class. Welcome to the Devy Devotional, where we stay devoted to Devy. I'm your host, John Arrington, joined as always by Aaron Wilcox and Andy Starr. And tonight I got lazy. I have a 2027 rookie mock draft article due at DLF by midnight. And so I said, what better way to get this article done than to have a 2027 rookie mock done with the boys here on Devy Devotional. That way I don't have to even think about it. We'll just go ahead and put in what we have here. But honestly, we'll get some other opinions as well. Probably better for the article anyway. So we're going to be diving into that 2027 class. Obviously, we've been talking about all the players who are standing out, all the players who are rising, falling, and everything else throughout college. The thing is, a lot of them are in that 27 class, and people have been trading for 27 first, skipping the 26 first, doing all that. We're gonna figure out, is it actually worth it, or is it more fool's gold when it's all said and done? There's obviously been some studs and some duds in the 2027 class, but we're gonna get into all that here in a little bit. First, let's check in with the boys. Aaron, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
I am doing well. Been a busy day, but excited to get into this mock. I mean, the 2027 class has been very much hyped up, and I think both classes are looking quite promising at this stage for different reasons or at different positional groups. So, yep, excited for it as always with you guys.
Definitely, and we're only going to do one round. There's just way too much going on in to do more than that, and that's honestly all I have to do for the article. So we're just going to stick to one round tonight. But let's check in with Andy. Another busy day for you, but I guess a fun day.
Yeah, we had a birthday party. We were having at our house, so I wasn't sure I was going to make it tonight. Had several all-day IPAs. Still waiting on that Founders sponsorship, but someday we'll get that. But yeah, 2027, a lot of good players. Obviously, the freshman class from last year was highly touted, and that's kind of what spurred that purchasing of the 2027 draft picks, and rightfully so. But good to bring these names up again, and there's a few names that have shown up this year that are sneaking into that first round conversation that obviously deserve to be talked about as well.
Yeah, this one will be fun, especially be interested to see which direction you guys go, because obviously there's a lot of good quality prospects, I should say. But for the purposes of this draft, we went ahead and took out any player that was eligible for the 2026 draft, except for Arch Manning. We all agreed that he's going to come back. There was some question of thought, like, hey, if he just goes out and just destroys the season, wins a national championship and all that kind of stuff, does he just go to the NFL at that point? I mean, not to say that they couldn't possibly win a national championship. I don't see that happening anymore. And obviously he's not really just running through the through the league and destroying every team either. So I'd say he probably needs a little more time. So we agreed Arch Manning is coming back for the 2027 draft class. Every other player that was eligible for the 26 draft is drafted, and so they will not be in this draft. That's probably not realistic. I'm sure there will be at least a couple, if not a handful of players that do, but that's just a little too difficult to do for this exercise. So we're just going to go ahead and make it easy for everyone. That way there's no confusion or anything like that. So Arch will be in this if he gets drafted. It's only one round. We'll see. But Andy requested. Normally, we all sit here and go, "Oh, who wants the 101? Who wants the whatever?" Andy requested the 101, and I was generous enough to let him have it. So here we are, Andy on the clock, 101 of 2027 draft class. Who you
Yeah,
taking?
yeah. I had mentioned that I had a few drinks. It was a birthday party. We were having some fun. So I was like, give me one pick where I don't have to think at all. And that's the 101. I think everybody's on board at this point. It is Ohio State wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, who's again having another stellar year, over 3 yards per route run, 30% market share in what is often considered the best wide receiver, or at least one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country as far as college football is concerned. And he just really hasn't shown any steps of like slowing down or any sort of regression. Not that we were expecting that, but I mean, number one overall recruit. He's done nothing to make us change our mind from where we were at, 6 months ago, a year ago. He's still there, Jeremiah Smith.
I cannot say that I'm surprised or shocked or anything like that. I mean, like you said, he's basically been the 101. I guess there's people, there's always going to be people that are going to start second guessing it and things as we go along. So I've heard like murmurs of people, probably overthinking it and saying, oh, I think I would put this person ahead of this person and ahead of Jeremiah Smith just because of this and that, whatever. But I think this is one of those things where you just go, nope, Jeremiah Smith was the pick. I think this is pretty damn easy. What do you think, Aaron? Andrew on the clock, 102.
Ooh, I am on the clock. Okay. Jeremiah Smith, yeah, great pick there. Don't need to say a whole lot more about it. The guy is a dominant wide receiver and a great prospect who should do well for Andy and anybody who can get their mitts on a early 2027 draft pick. So I will go here at the 102, and I think this is a very easy pick myself, but Ryan Williams, Alabama wide receiver. So going wide receiver to start this draft. Ryan Williams, very talented young wide receiver who came out of high school early and has just flashed some brilliance with the ball in his hands as a playmaker. He can win all over the field. He is a fast, elusive, twitchy type of player with some nice body control and even catching skills. He's not a contested catch type of guy, but he certainly tracks the ball well. So Ryan Williams is a very attractive young wide receiver prospect who I expect to come out in that 2027 draft.
Yeah, I love Williams. Actually, Andy and I were talking about him like right before you jumped on, Aaron, tonight, and we were basically just saying, I don't know that we can. I was saying, he obviously he feels like he's having kind of an underwhelming season, but I don't know that we can blame him for that. I think it's more of a Ty Simpson thing than anything. Even though Jalen Milroe wasn't some amazing quarterback, he did have a really nice deep ball, and so we're not necessarily seeing that with Simpson as much. Although Andy was saying, believe it or not, Ryan Williams is still top 10 in the country, and I believe it was yards per route run, at least for this draft class. So, it's like you can say he's kind of underwhelming, but he's doing it in a Ryan Williams-esque fashion.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I was going to add in here as well. He obviously has missed some time. He's dealing with some injuries, but when he's playing, when he's on the field, he's getting the targets. He's getting the target share. He's got around 3 yards per route run, which is fantastic. Anything above two is great for a wide receiver prospect. He's not running downfield as much, like John said. The ADOT's around 10 this year, where we're used to seeing him more of as a further down the field threat. But I'm not going to take anything away from him. When he's on the field, he's electric, and when he's healthy, which we fully expect him to be healthy by the time 2027 rolls around, it's going to be a smash pick. I think you can make some arguments for some other wide receivers at this spot, but some of the other ones are also dealing with injuries. So I don't think the arguments are necessarily warranted. I think Ryan Williams is still firmly entrenched in the 102.
Yeah, and I agree. I actually do have him a little bit lower, and just because I really think it's more because of Ty Simpson than anything else. But he's in the same tier as the other player that I would possibly put over him at this point. So it's one of those things where at this point we'd probably be looking at landing spot and things like that. So by no means am I saying this is a bad pick, because this is for the last 2 years. This is who we're saying are 101, 101, and 102. Excuse me. That brings me up at 103, and I think I'm going to throw you guys for a loop here. I'm I guess I tend to do this in the mock drafts. I tend to like put my stamp on a guy, and in the past I've done that with Jackson Dart when he was not expected to be a first round pick. I said no, 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 I'm drafting Jackson Dart in the first round. I've done it with some other players as well. I'm going to do it with CJ Carr as well. I think when it's all said and done, CJ Carr is going to be the QB1 of that class, from what we've seen this season. And we've talked about Carr, recently, so it's kind of weird how we went from he's a decent recruit to he might not even win the starting job to now I'm sitting here taking him at 103 in the 2027 class, rookie mock. And it is a little crazy, but everything that we've seen so far from Carr has just been, I don't want to say elite, but I mean definitely high end, and things that we like to see. The intended air yards are at 10.7. He's pushing the ball down the field, but he's staying relatively safe with the ball as well while he's doing that. The big time throw rate is up in the sixes, I believe. Where are we at? Yeah, 6.3 for CJ Carr percent. So I mean that's exactly what we want to see. Pushing the ball down the field, throwing the big time throws, and yet still being relatively safe with the ball. And it's not even like we can sit there. I love Jordan Faison, and I love what's the Eli Raridan, and like those players. But I don't know that we can say that they have the best receiving core in the nation or anything like that at over at Notre Dame. So not to say that he's working with no one, but it's not like he's like some of these QBs where we can say, oh, Julian Sands being elevated by Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and all those other 5-star wide receivers. I don't think we're seeing that per se with CJ Carr. It's just a solid QB. There might not be the high end upside because he doesn't have the rushing ability and things. So, I don't know if he's ever going to break fantasy, but he might just be a really safe, good, quality QB for your teams. So I guess I'm kind of putting my stamp here. I probably didn't need to take him at 103, but maybe you guys can tell me I'm wrong. I don't know.
Well, in my opinion, I guess that, I probably wouldn't have felt comfortable drafting him there. I guess we'll say that with CJ Carr. And it is something where I don't know that we have a big enough sample size of him truly being dominant, but he's been very solid thus far, right? And he's played solid competition. We've talked about that with the Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price conversations as well, that they've played a pretty tough schedule and they've still held up really quite well. So yeah, CJ Carr doesn't really offer some sort of elite mobility at the quarterback position, but last week or the week before, briefly mentioned him on here and talked about how he has at least sufficient mobility, right? It's not that rushing huge upside, but I do think he can navigate at least functionally inside or even a little bit outside of the pocket. So CJ Carr, very interesting guy at this range, in the early first. I think it's bold, but at the Devy Devotional here, we are sometimes known for having some bold takes that are bold at the time, but as time ages on, they a lot of times they can age well as well.
Yeah, I mean, if he hadn't gone to you at one of your next two picks or Aaron at 105, I would have been extremely happy to take CJ Carr at 106. I think at this point, like he's the only one that we can say in this class that's really having a solid passing season. I know the mobility's not there. To me, that's not something that I'm terribly, ecstatic about from a QB perspective, I mean, I know it adds a lot from a fantasy perspective, but when you look at the quarterback position, longevity is more important. And the guys that last the longest in the league are the ones that are safe with the football and can make plays downfield with their arm. And I think that's what CJ Carr is. He's a guy that could be a potential starter in the NFL for, the better part or more than a decade. So I think it's a good pick at 103. I think it's a little early. I was kind of expecting him to be there at 106, but I'm not going to sit here and say that you're wrong for taking him at 103.
Yeah, and honestly, I did not do a lot of prep going into this, but I wanted intentionally. I wanted to make these picks on the clock. Like, how do I feel about these players? That's how I tend to do it. When I'm actually drafting as well. Obviously, I do research and I have the data sitting here, but I don't sit there and overthink. Oh, who am I going to take at 1? Who am I going to take at 3 or whatever? I let the draft happen, and then as it happens, I sit there and go, you know what? It's time. It's CJ Carr time. So that's what I went ahead and did, knowing that I had 2 picks. So obviously I'm going to go a little safer here, but I wanted to put my mark there at the 103. But the player that I was saying has moved up into that Ryan Williams conversation for me has to be Cam Coleman. I think that he has proven that he is just a stud X wide receiver, the epitome of that. What you want your X wide receiver to be, a la Tet McMillan from this previous class. You got the size, you got the speed, you got the contested catch ability, you have everything you need with that. And he's just really standing out in a not great environment. He's still really standing out and saying hey, I'm the one. I'm still making big plays. I'm still doing these things. As a sophomore, and give me another year, and I'll be a true stud. And so I'm taking Cam Coleman here at the 104.
Cam Coleman obviously he's one of those excellent freshman seasons that we got from the 2024 freshman class. I think he's taken a bit of a step back. So I don't know if I would put him on the same tier as a Ryan Williams or even some of the other wide receivers that I like in this class. He did have a big game last week against Missouri. If he can keep that up, then yeah, he'll be right back in the conversation just based on what we saw from his freshman season. Just kind of getting back to that level. But prior to that, you've got games of 18 yards, 50 yards, 49 yards, 23 yards. Nothing too exciting. And the yards per route run has dropped below 2 for this season. But it could be a nature of the offense because Eric Singleton, another guy that we've liked, again, the production isn't quite there, but I think I probably would have leaned some different wide receivers here or maybe even a different position, but Cam Coleman had an excellent freshman season. He can certainly spend the rest of this year bouncing back. He's right there on the cusp of what I like to see. So he had a big game last week. I have no doubts that he could potentially continue that.
Yeah, Cam Coleman, he's super talented as far as the traits go, and so those are going to pop off the page, especially when it comes to testing and ultimately what NFL front offices still value. And I know there was some talk when Cam Coleman was coming out as a freshman, well, is that type of a wide receiver like the T. Higgins of the world and these bigger type of guys, is that still a viable weapon? But we're still seeing relevance. If you're a good player, you're a fluid and complete wide receiver, you can make it at the NFL level. In today's NFL, being 6'4" or 6'3" in that range. So yeah, I have no concerns necessarily about Cam Coleman size-wise. I think the athleticism is still there. It's clearly, for me, a quarterback issue because you look across the board, everybody's efficiency within that offense is nuked. Like you said, Eric Singleton Jr., very talented, one of the fastest guys in this class if he declares. And he's been banged up this season, but he has 8.6 yards per reception. Malcolm Simmons, pretty promising. developing guy as well long term there. He's been really quite average or subpar. Perry Thompson, explosive down the field type of guy as well. Nobody is popping off big plays. Cam Coleman's doing the most in that wide receiver room, and he's dominating as far as the yardage goes for that team as well. And he's been healthy, which is always nice to see. So I I am liking the pick there. There's a couple other guys I would have considered, but Coleman was squarely in that consideration for me. So I think the Auburn situation, I don't know that it could get worse next year. I guess I shouldn't say that, right? It can always get worse, but I mean, yeah, it's been pretty rough as far as the down the field passing for Auburn.
I mean, let's just put it into some context here. Jackson Arnold has thrown for 1,190 yards and 5 touchdowns. Five passing touchdowns the entire season. He has played 7 games. They've played 7 games, and he's passed for 1,200 yards and 5 touchdowns. And Cam Coleman has 402 of those. So, that just goes to show you the market share there. That's one thing that Debbie Best is always going to do a really good job of, is even being able to pick up on guys that aren't necessarily showing out production wise, but it's not their fault. And we see that a lot. And I definitely think these are, you can say Singleton Jr., obviously, you can Malcolm Simmons, but definitely Cam Coleman is being hurt by that. But you still see the flashes, and I think that's the important part, is you still see those big games out of a terrible offense, but a great player, and that's why I'm hanging my hat on with Cam Coleman. Give me, people are all over Drake London right now. Obviously they still love T Higgins for whatever reason. I'll never really get that one, but people still think that he's like a top 12 wide receiver for some reason. But we see that these bigger guys can and will still be viable in the NFL today. But that brings us, Aaron, back on the clock at 105.
Yes, and I agree. Guys like T. Higgins, they haven't strung it together, right? That's more of a health thing. He's always had some health issues, especially the last couple of years, right? But when he's healthy, he's like that wide receiver two type of player. And we both agree that Cam Coleman, I think all three of us likely agree that Cam Coleman's probably a better athlete with long speed in comparison to T. Higgins. But anyways, next I'm going to go a guy where I'm taking a chance on the health of this player and presumed availability going into next season. But I don't, based on the news that I am hearing, I don't have any concerns long term. I think they're taking a cautious approach going forwards with a Bryant Wesco, Clemson wide receiver, who has been dominant this year. He's been Clemson's wide receiver one in the midst of a very talented wide receiver room with TJ Moore and Antonio Williams, and even some of the depth guys there too. And Bryant Wesco was clearly the number one. That's how Dabo has referred to him as. That's what the production says, the explosiveness. Even going back to last season, we really saw the most promise out of that receiving room in a freshman, and Bryant Wesco really showing up and breaking out. He continued on with that trend this season. Unfortunately, it's a huge bummer that this last week he came down really awkwardly, and I guess landed on the neck. I saw one replay of it. I didn't get to really analyze it, but everybody was very concerned for his health, including the coaching staff. So as a precautionary step, they brought him into the hospital, made sure they did imaging, ruled out anything significant. He went home right away. He was healthy, no, big procedures needed to be done with Bryant Wesco. So I am confident long term it shouldn't be an issue of like you think about Ross there at Clemson in years past, a very talented guy early on, but had I believe, a neck issue as well. But it seems like that's a little bit of a different issue compared to what Bryant Wesco's likely dealing with. So a neck sprain here, they're being very cautious with it. Don't know that we'll see him the rest of the season based on the reports there. But Bryant Wesco going into next season, I'm just super excited for him to continue to ascend. We assume that Antonio Williams is gone. Bryant Wesco is an absolute stud at the wide receiver position. Enough size, route running, hands, all those things. So maybe this is a risky one banking on the health, I guess, the uncertainty there. But I'm willing to take that shot here in the middle of the first.
Yeah, I like the pick here. I would have taken him in one of my next two picks, just based on what Dabo Sweeney was saying, like, they were praising the doctors after the game, saying he's going to make a full recovery. He did check into the hospital, but he was out that same day. Neck, back, something. So it's hard for us to just sit here and say what exactly that is. But the coach seemed pretty confident that he will make a full recovery. We're sitting here in October. Obviously it sounds like something that might keep him out of spring next year too, which is not a huge concern just because we've already seen what Bryant Wesco can do, and if he gets back to 100% by the time August rolls around, then nobody should be concerned. So he put it down on tape his freshman year. I thought he was probably the best receiver on their team last year as well, and then this year he really ascended to that role. And despite the team kind of taking a step back and this quarterback taking a massive step back, he didn't take any steps back. If anything, he stepped forward. So Bryant Wesco, yeah, I think, you know, if you're gonna put him in a tier, I feel like he's in that same tier as Cam Coleman, maybe a couple other guys. But from what we've seen so far, I think Wesco is probably, in my opinion, the third best receiver in this class over a guy like Cam Coleman. But I think you can make an argument for both of those guys.
Yeah, I don't know if people like hearing about the little details and little like intricacies and stuff of Debbie Beth or not, but I talked about in the past how I've made little adjustments. Like every once in a while I'll do a manual adjustment, like I did with Mario Craver, because people say he's just too small, he can never be good, and and all that. So I did a manual adjustment with him just because of the neck issue. Obviously, we know neck issues can really be a big deal, and I really truly hope, I love Wesco to death. I truly hope it's not. But it does scare me a little bit. So I went ahead and did the same manual adjustment to him just to try and save myself from my love for Wesco, just in case. He didn't move. He didn't move a single spot. Now his grade changed technically, but he did not actually move in Debbie Beth. So even with the manual adjustment, I still love him to death. So love the pick. It is a little scary, but like both of you said, there's plenty of time. I think he's going to be, we're already hearing good news and things, which is probably more than we can say for a lot of players. A lot of times you just hear no news. So even the fact that we're hearing good news is probably an amazing thing, I would say. So I'm just definitely holding out hope. Love the player. Like Andy was saying, if anything, in a worse situation, he's actually kind of stood up and said, no, I'm going to take a step forward this year and look that much better. So yeah, love the player. The injury scares me a little bit, but Andy, you got any surprises for us? Or are you going to go chalk here, 106?
It might be a surprise, but I think for our group it might be chalk. I'm going to take the first running back off the board and go with Ahmad Hardy from Missouri, who, I'll just say it. I was wrong on him. I've said it a couple times in our pod already. Um, he proved me wrong. I was sure that he was not, this big time run player based on what we saw at ULM last year. He is exactly the opposite of what I thought. He's sitting at right around a 10% big time run rate right now. Really an explosive runner, almost 5 yards after contact per attempt. Obviously, the only, I guess, check or dash you can put on his profile right now is why isn't he catching the ball? He's only got 4 catches on the season. I like to think that that's an offense thing. You can work anybody into some sort of a dump off screen game if you want to, which they're just choosing not to do. I think they'd much rather do like the underneath stuff. They're working in that freshman wide receiver Alugabode and a few other guys into the short passing game. So it just hasn't fallen on Ahmad Hardy. So I'm not saying that he couldn't be that type of player, but just based on what we are seeing from him as a pure runner, makes him easily the best guy in this class for me.
Yeah, I assumed he was going to be coming up here pretty soon. If it wasn't going to be you, it would definitely have been me, even though I'm not up for a few picks here. But I guess, like you said, that the receiving game isn't quite there. I don't know that we can truly say any of the top guys in the 2027 class truly have that much of a receiving game yet. So, maybe that's something we'll see in their junior year, or, see take a step forward at some point, something like that. There's a couple of guys, but I don't know. They're a little bit lower for me just because they haven't quite been there. So, obviously the big time run rate has been there. The big plays, the big games have been there for Hardy, and he's easily the RB1 right now, at least for the 2027 class in Debbie Beth.
Yeah, I think right now there's still some optimism, of course, right, coming off of a very strong start. But we look at the last couple of games, and that's just really that, or maybe last three games, kind of crashed down as far as the efficiency goes. And I guess that was my biggest hesitation looking 3, 4 games into the season was like, look at the competition. Yes, great production, great explosiveness, but will he be able to continue that against tougher competition ahead? And we're seeing that the last few weeks against Alabama. Okay, yeah, tough defense, right? It's Alabama, but even Auburn really shut him down. And like you guys said, not really a receiving threat at this point. So maybe it's a reflection on the running backs in that class. Some of them underwhelming this season, and Hardy obviously, breaking out further from his G5 start to his career there last season. So by no means do I think Hardy's bad, but I've been a little bit skeptical in the last few weeks. Haven't made me any more confident, that's for sure. Especially when his backfield mate Jamal Roberts has been more efficient both as a rusher and much more involved and reliable as a receiving threat. And Jamal Roberts, he's going to have another year of eligibility if he stays there at Missouri. So we'll see what happens, right? Ahmad Hardy still a very talented rusher, and he's taken a big step forwards here. And I can't really fault Andy by any means for taking a guy who, at this point in the 2027 draft, amongst guys who are in their second year in college football, has still looked good on the season.
All right,
Andy,
well,
you're
I
up for another
guess
one.
yeah. I'll hit the double tap here, and I'm gonna do it just because I'm gonna bet on the upside, and I will take the one guy who we made eligible in this draft from the 2026 class, Arch Manning. And there's no way to say it other than to say he's been not great this year. Like 5 interceptions, only 12 touchdowns, yards per attempts under 8 yards, big time throws rate sitting right at 5%. Turnover worthy play is also at around 5%. He's still got the 8 out above 10 yards, and the games that he's playing against good competition like Florida, Oklahoma. Those aren't great games either. They lost to Florida. He threw 2 interceptions in that game. Oklahoma they won, but he had 166 yards passing. It wasn't like he was making any sort of electric plays. And then last week against Kentucky, only 132 yards passing, less than 5 yards per attempt. It hasn't been great. There's no way else to say it. But we've seen flashes, and we saw flashes in year 2 when Quinn Ewers got hurt. And again, he wasn't playing the best competition then. And we saw it again this year when he plays Sam Houston. He throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and almost 15 yards per attempt. So those are obviously padding the numbers that we're seeing this season so far. But I think with another year in the system and just betting on the talent and what we've seen in flashes, he can string together a solid season on one of the premier teams in college football and get himself back into like that first round discussion.
That's a bold pick, but I think it makes sense that he is the most prominent quarterback, at least, hype wise. I mean, I guess you could say, like, at one point, DJ Legway also had a lot of hype for Florida, or maybe like a Julian Sand. I'm not trying to spoil some potential picks here in this draft, this 1 round draft. But those are, I mean, maybe other considerations here, but big name guys, Arch really is at the top of the list, right? And yeah, he's been pretty bad this season, but I mean, he's got time to turn it around. He has some of the talent, and typically a very good surrounding cast there at Texas. So we'll see what they can do to bolster that wide receiver room. I know Emmett Mosley has not really panned out yet, but that's partially because of poor health to start the season. Ryan Wingo's been very inconsistent, hit or miss with some big plays, but also some disappointing ones. Haven't really seen the other guys step up. Yeah, so Arch has not elevated things, but there's still room for optimism. I'm not going to completely give up on the guy, and that's an upside shot here in the draft.
Yeah, he was definitely going to be my next pick if he was still there. I I think that people love to hate players like that if they don't quite live up to their name, and so everyone's having fun like, oh, Arch Manning's the worst quarterback in college and you got to bench him and blah blah blah. It's like, have you seen all the other quarterbacks in college football right now? Because yeah, Arch is not being. Our Arch is not like looking like like Peyton Manning right now, but I'll tell you what, like he's being relatively safe with the ball. Um, he still has a he's still pushing the ball down the field. He's still trying to make bigger plays. They just haven't really been happening as much as we would like them to. But those are the kind of things that you can fix on a guy. I have a lot of people, a lot of film grinders I've heard are just, it's just really his feet right now. His footwork is just sloppy, and it's making for some bad throws, unnecessary throws, things like that. Those are the kind of things that you can fix, and then next thing you know, that big time throw rate and all that kind of stuff does work out, and then now you're looking at a complete stud. I think that this is where he should go right as of right now. Obviously, there's a lot of time to see what happens between now and then. But I'm with both of you guys. I think that he can easily, fix things, right things. Texas should be able to bring in other players, or have some of the youth, stand up. They had a great recruiting class this year. We haven't seen them really truly like be utilized, but that's not out of the ordinary. So maybe as sophomores, some of those players can stand out and do something next year, and then maybe that they can put together a really solid season from there. So I know it's a lot of fun to make fun of Arch and all that kind of stuff, and we're all for fun. But honestly, he's right here. He is the QB2 in the class for Devy Beth, and still even with the poor games and things that we've seen, and so I'm right there with you. But I believe that brings up Aaron at the 108. I'm guessing you didn't get sniped because you said it was a bold pick. So I don't know if you were going to take the bold pick as well, or if you're going in a different direction here.
Yeah, no, I was not going to select Arch here. Like you said, there's a chance he bounces back, but at this point, I think it's a little bit risky. But those quarterbacks are so valuable in fantasy formats, right? Especially if you land the high end ones. So, but speaking of high end playmakers and talents here, I've got a couple of guys I'm very interested in. So it's really tough for me to make a decision what position group I want to go with here. I am going to hope that one of the guys that I want falls back to me. And I'm going to select Isaac Brown, Louisville running back here. And so the interesting thing about Isaac Brown this year is he's not going to pop as well as he probably should in any sort of analytical model because the last 3 weeks he's been working his way back from pretty he's been very banged up. Let's just say that. He's been hurt. He's been playing hurt, and you can see that effectiveness kind of drained. So that's why the cumulative numbers and the efficiency has been a little bit worse of late. But last week, he started to actually look like he's got that burst back. We know he's a very explosive guy, a 22 mile per hour type of runner. He has the same size of like a Devin Chain, that 5'9", 190 pounds. I think Isaac Brown can get a little bit bigger too, but doesn't really need to in today's NFL. Very explosive back who relies on speed, and he's a capable receiving option as well. So he will have another year in that Louisville system that just produces some fun offensive playmakers. And yes, I expect him to continue to get better and better as the season goes along, as he gets a little bit further out from whatever injury he sustained. So that is a little bit of a projection, but one of the best playmakers and most explosive guys at the running back position going to be available in that 2027 draft.
Yeah, and obviously the big time run rate is way up there. Around the 15% range. He just had a huge game this past week, which we love to see. Like Aaron was saying, he's kind of coming back from injury. He's playing through it, but not playing very well for a few weeks. But I was saying before how with Ahmad Hardy, we don't have a lot of guys in the class yet that have a lot of receiving work just yet. Brown is one of those that actually does have some of the receiving work. So that's something that we do already see. Really, it's the weight. It's the size, and we definitely do our best to not be sizes here. And we can easily see him gain 5 or 10 pounds or whatever and be right in that range where we need him to be come the combine next year. He could honestly come into the spring next year and be 198 or whatever, and then we're gonna be, oh, okay, he's fine. We don't have to worry about this anymore. So I don't necessarily have him as my RB2 in the class or anything, but I think it's just the size. So that's when you're dealing with something like Debbie Bet, obviously that is something that it takes into account. And like I said, if he comes into the spring and he's a little bit bigger, he probably could jump up to RB2 or something like that when it's all said and done. So it's definitely not the numbers. It's not what he's doing. It's just more of, is the NFL going to look at him as just a scat back, or are they going to be able to look at him as more than that?
Yeah, it's 5 pounds for me. If he gets to 195, I'm happy. And I'm not saying that 190 is out of the question either, because we've seen the running back position get smaller progressively over the years. Maybe that trend continues. I do have him as my RB2 in this class. He's only played 75 snaps, and he's touched the ball on 71 of those 75 snaps, which, and the big time run rate is obviously, it's crazy right now, but he's only had 60 carries. But he's at, I think, 15% big time run rate at this point. He hasn't really exploded out of the backfield as a receiver yet, but we did see that last year. So it's not something that we're not, we think that he's lost or anything like that. I think he's going to only improve as a receiver, and I think as the season goes on, he's going to start to see more and more snaps, and we're seeing it progress in real time. Like week 1, 6 snaps, 12, 1, and then these last 3 weeks he's gone 17, 18, 21. So they're working him in slowly. He's getting more touches, and that's translating to production. Against Miami, he had over 100 yards running and added a couple catches too. So I think Isaac Brown, like I said, probably my RB2 right now, but I certainly would love to see him put on 5 to 10 pounds in the off season, because then I'm not going to have any concerns about him at all.
Yeah, like I said, that's basically the only issue. And Aaron said he missed 16 missed tackles forced against Miami. That's pretty wild. And not to say that Miami is the best team out there or anything like that, but they're definitely a highly ranked and a solid team. So nothing to cough at there. I am up for 2 picks here, and I'll tell you what, I'm kind of struggling here because I know one pick for sure that I want to do, but I'm kind of waffling back and forth on my other pick, and I don't want to. I don't want to mess it up because this is my last 2 picks of the round, last 2 picks of the draft. So, and we got to make it good for the article as well, of course. So I'm just gonna go ahead and take the one that I know for sure, and then we'll figure out the second one here in a minute. I am going to take Nick Marsh out of Michigan State here. I think that while Michigan State obviously is probably not going to get the love that people might consider, I think that Marsh stands out in not the greatest of situations as just a true stud player. Once again, going back to your Wescos and your Colemans and players like that right now that are just dealing with kind of poor QB play. We're kind of dealing with the same thing here with Marsh, and yet you're looking at 650 receiving yards and 15.8 yards per reception. The yards per team pass attempt over two, 27% market share. I believe he's at 26 last year. So I mean, just really consistent. Just basically been that offense for the most part. Obviously the PPR points aren't exactly where I would like them to be. The PPR points per touch, I should say. I would like for it to be a little bit higher. And he technically is a tier break from those guys that we've already talked about, your Wescos and your Cam Colemans and things like that. But I truly believe it's more of the offense and everything than what Marsh himself can do. And so I think there's another kind of tier break after Marsh. He's kind of in a tier of his own right now, at least in my opinion. And so I'm willing to take him here at 109. I think that's going to be a solid player that can help you for years to come. And you're taking him there, like towards the end of the round, you could feel pretty damn good about that.
A very solid pick. I don't. There was a couple other guys that I considered here, slightly ahead of him, but I'm not going to fault anybody for that. Like, you just look at the raw production or what Michigan State's done this year, and then you might become a little bit underwhelmed there. But you see that Nick Marsh, he's still been dominating the targets there. He's still been doing some really good things, especially the last couple weeks. Like, he's kind of coming along there. And yeah, so I'm excited for what's ahead. He showed up as a true freshman. So Nick Marsh, good upside pick there, guy who has a lot of size and also some athletic ability to him as well.
Yeah, and I can just tell you, as someone who lives in Michigan, I think this is a 100% transfer candidate. Their coach is likely going to be fired within the next few weeks unless he starts winning games out of nowhere, essentially, because they're getting blown out of the water by UCLA and then last week as well. It was Indiana. It was a good team, but they were never really had a shot once halftime happened. And I know that Michigan State does have a solid fan base here, and they're not very patient. They're used to the D'Antonio years where they were competing with Michigan, and that's not happening anymore. And this is also a new athletic director who did not hire this coach, Jonathan Smith. So it seems like this coach will be fired, and Nick Marsh is going to be in the transfer portal, and he's going to be one of, if not the top wide receivers in the transfer portal when that time comes around in January. And my guess is he goes to a really good SEC school, maybe even like an Ohio State. I don't think that's necessarily out of the question, something like that. But he's going to go somewhere where the offense knows how to use him, and he's going to see those numbers that he's capable of. Like Aaron was saying, he's getting 14 targets against UCLA. Those 14 targets only turned into 77 yards, which is obviously not what you want to see. So I like the pick here. I'll just say that right now. I think it is an offense thing that's holding him back, because it's also affecting his yards per route run, which is the stat that I really love for wide receivers, which just after last week did drop below 2, but not enough for me to really be concerned about it. I think he's one of the best receivers in this class, and when he does go to a team that actually knows how to use him or has the talent to use him properly, he's going to really, pop.
Honestly, I don't know why I didn't even think about him transferring, but that makes so much sense, and I'm glad that you have some some facts to back all that kind of stuff up. Yeah, I mean, if he were to go to an Ohio State or something like that, holy crap, that would be unbelievable. We're assuming that Carnell Tate's going to the NFL this year. What if they want to try to have a 1-2 punch with Jeremiah Smith and Nick Marsh? That would be wild. I guess, we can say there's a lot of underwhelming QB play in college right now. So, beyond going to like a program like an Ohio State or something, I don't know that we can truly say it would be 1,000 times better. But, I guess we would hope that he would make the right decision. Like we were talking about before, now that they only have the one choice, you can only transfer once or at least once per year. and he would hopefully be doing it for his last year. You would think that he would really put some thought into it and make the right choice there. So I honestly wasn't. It's just this is all on me. I was not even thinking transfer. I was just like, hey, within that offense, he's doing the right things and all that kind of stuff. But holy crap, if he were to transfer out, that could be unbelievable. And then this could look like a steal if he's over at Ohio State and he's running with Jeremiah Smith and putting up similar numbers and things like that. Looking like Egbuka compared to Smith or something like that. Then that could be unreal. But I do appreciate you guys talking all that through and giving me enough time to make my decision. I was looking through some running backs, and I really wanted to kind of choose one. I honestly don't. I don't feel strongly enough about any of the running backs to say that I want any of the other ones beyond the ones that we've talked about here. I think there's just too many. There's too many questions about all of them. Whether it's health related or whether it's like can they handle a full workload or whatever it is. And that brings me to my pick. And this is not me saying that after all that I'm 100% all in on this player, but I do have to believe that if Julian Sayin continues doing what he's doing now with Jeremiah Smith and possibly Nick Marsh, then for the next couple of years, then he's going to be drafted. And like while I don't necessarily love his numbers, the big time throw rate is not what I would like it to be. The intended air yards are at 8.5 this year, which is not obviously does not meet that threshold that I'm looking for of 9.5. The big time throw rate is there. It's right at 5%. It's right at the threshold that I'm looking for. Now, unfortunately, that's with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and all that kind of stuff. So, that's where I'm like, hey, like I'm making this pick, but I'm also kind of pumping the brakes on this one because I don't necessarily love this player. He does have some athleticism. He can get out of the pocket and do some things with it. So he's not necessarily the statue that I drafted earlier with CJ Carr, but I believe at 110 here, that like I said, if he continues playing the way he's playing, he's probably going to be a lot higher than this. And so I feel like he kind of needs to be at least mentioned in the first round. I can't say that I've ever truly been a fan or a stan or anything like that. But I mean, he's truly playing better than a lot of other quarterbacks in a space where the quarterbacks are not doing very much.
He's been efficient. And Julian saying, unfortunately, I have to disagree with at least the mobility part. Like, I think he's probably more limited than Carr, honestly. But saying he's been efficient this year. Is it the system? I don't know. I mean, he's been extremely efficient. Let's just say that, right? And yes, good weapons, all that, good offensive line. They've really handled all their competition well this season. And you could say kind of what competition, right? It's been a pretty easy schedule for Ohio State, but you can't take that away from him. That he's just played really well and dominated like he should have. And maybe he'll have Nick Marsh to throw to the next year too. So be pretty fun. Though I think Marsh, if he does end up transferring out of Michigan State, could be I mean, he's a great Carnell Tate replacement, yes, but he could be a Jeremy Bernard replacement at Alabama. Ooh. He could be a what we thought Emmett Mosley or a Ryan Wingo or somebody like that could be at Texas for Arch Manning, right? There's some juicy landing spots out there. Or he could go to Penn State and just, not be involved at all and in a train wreck, whatever happens there in the future. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
God, just don't even say that. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I mean, Andy already said that he was going to Ohio State, so I think we just have to go with that at this point.
Yeah. And not to break back to Marsh, but I've been a little bit underwhelmed. I was looking at like his longest plays of the year, and I know it's like the quarterback play and the offense hasn't been good, but the guy, I mean, he had 140-yard play like week 2, and then everything else has been like in the teens or maybe like a 20-yard reception, right? It's not ripping off the huge ones that I want to see, which is a little disappointing. But again, when he ends up with Julian Sayin at Ohio State, like Andy has predicted to 100% happen, Nick Marsh will be a lot better.
Andy, when this happens, like we're gonna play this clip.
And I know, you're gonna have to. Like, this guy called that he was going to Ohio State way back in October. No, but to talk about Julian saying like he's literally putting up Will Howard's season that Will Howard had as a fifth year player this
Right.
season as a redshirt freshman. So we got to expect that there's going to be some progression. He's going to have another season with the best player in college football catching his passes. So the fact that he's already at or near those thresholds makes me feel like he's a safe enough guy to bet on, especially with a later pick in the first round. That he's going to continue to grow and develop in that offense, and then Nick Marshall get there and really just open this thing up. So
Absolutely.
I like the pick at 110. I think you could probably argue, switching Arch and Julian Sayin, like Aaron was saying earlier, just because Julian's actually having a good season. They played each other head to head, and Julian Sayin's team won. So there's that. But yeah, I like the pick at 110. I think that if you're going to take another quarterback in this round, he's really the only other guy that we could mention.
All right, I love to hear it, Aaron. You got one more pick, then Andy will round out the round, and then I guess we'll probably do some honorable mentions after that, and then get out of here because we are pretty close to the hour mark as usual.
Yeah, so for the last pick here, I am between two guys, and I am shocked that John did not select one of these wide receivers. My jaw has almost been on the floor.
Uh-oh. Who did I forget?
But maybe I'll leave him for Andy. I think Andy knows where my head's at here. I'm actually gonna go here with another Clemson wide receiver, T.J. Moore. T.J. Moore, he has been showing up of late, and a guy that I still liked, despite like that slightly slow start that we saw. Like he had a great freshman season. The only reason we weren't talking about him more was the Bryant Wesco thing, right? Because Wesco is also a good player. It's possible to have two really good wide receivers out of the same recruiting class and also in the same NFL draft class, and I think we could see that here again with TJ Moore at Clemson, especially when Antonio Williams has departed, which I think we're going to see him leave, and that really opens up even more opportunity for TJ Moore. And guess who's going to capitalize on with the very unfortunate injury to Bryant Wesco? It's TJ Moore. TJ Moore is going to soak up an insane amount of targets rest of season. Whoever's throwing him the ball, it doesn't matter if it's Vizina or Klubnik or whoever. And we've seen that. I mean, even with Wesco in there, TJ Moore had 17 targets on September 20th against Syracuse. And he's been pretty good since then, making some big plays and really an uptick in production and explosiveness. So we're seeing the TJ Moore breakout second half of the season, or I should say, not the second half, but like after a somewhat slow start. We can be super excited about him as a player, a size, speed specimen. We've unfortunately seen Mike Evans go down last night with pretty big injury, unfortunately for him, with the shoulder and maybe concussion with it. Like that guy's had a heck of a career, and I've always seen some similarities with TJ Moore to a Mike Evans. Not saying they're the same exactly, but some similarities in their big players who are fluid and still big time playmakers at a nice big size. So, anyways, TJ Moore, Clemson wide receiver at the 111.
I like it. I hate that the Wesco injury is going to, basically make him an afterthought, and then maybe TJ Moore kind of, thrives because of that. But it's not like he hasn't been doing more recently already. It definitely was a slow start to the year, and it was very concerning because it was like this is a guy that we all had top 12 going into the season, and then all of a sudden it was like, all right, well, he's top 15. All right, he's top 20. He's top 40. Like, started getting kind of scared. And then, now, like, he's obviously standing out and doing a lot more. Like I said, I have, who did I take? I took Marsh as the last wide receiver for myself. I have him a tier break ahead of TJ Moore, maybe because of the question marks and things like that. But that's not to say that TJ Moore is not up there and deserving of a 111 pick, which I should probably actually put it here in the sheet because he absolutely is. And like I said, with Wesco missing time, that's just going to allow him to do even more, grow his production, grow his profile. and then he probably will be drafted very well. But it was just like I said, it was a scary start to the season. But you start looking at the numbers, and honestly, like his numbers are very similar, if possibly even better than what he was doing last year. It's just, I guess maybe we expected, or some people expected him to like become the one, and Wesco was like, "Nah, dude, that ain't happening." So so that I think that was really all it was. It was like, okay, no, we just have two studs on this team, and we just have to realize that.
Right. It's like, do we knock an Olave because Garrett Wilson's there? Or do we knock, somebody else because JSN's there? Or do we knock what Cardinal Tate's doing because Jeremiah Smith is there? And I keep using Ohio State references for that, but there's other
It's
rooms where
easier, yeah.
that's true for. Right. Yeah. Easy enough comparison. So maybe seeing something like that at Clemson, who has a pretty good track record too. If we just go to historical team success for putting out wide receivers, I know it's been a little bit of a lull there for some years, but in the past they've definitely put out some talented wide receivers too.
Yeah, I like the pick. I like John was saying. I hate that the people that maybe had T.J. Moore ahead of Bryant Wesco are gonna kind of be right at the end of the season. But T.J. Moore has, we always like T.J. Moore. So it wasn't a matter of like Wesco or Moore. I mean, obviously we were on the Wesco side, but it seems like Moore now is gonna get a lot of those targets and really excel and put himself in a good spot for this draft class. But he's had a great season. Just in the last three weeks, he's had two 100-yard games. He's sitting at right at 2 yards per route run. So I can't hate on T.J. Moore. He's having, like you said, John, he's having a better season than he did last year, which is what you want to see. You want to see progression. He's doing that with Wesco in the offense. Obviously, Wesco went down early last week, and then T.J. Moore came in there, and that it was a bad game for Clemson, but SMU ended up winning that game. But still, T.J. Moore comes out of that game with 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think that's what we're gonna see moving on from this point on the rest of the season, which is really gonna vault him into that first round conversation, especially with the draft nicks and the people that do those mock draft sort of things this time, or early in the season. They're going to be talking about TJ Moore early, which is unfortunate because I feel like Bryant Wesco should have been that guy, and now it doesn't seem like that might happen, but we'll see. We'll see how Wesco's recovery goes, but don't want to take anything away from TJ Moore because he's having a great season as well.
I agree, and you are up at the 112 to round us out.
All right, I know exactly what Aaron was talking about. My jaw also hit the floor because I feel like you mentioned Craver earlier in the pod, so I'm gonna.
Oh my
take
God,
him there.
I completely skipped him. I completely forgot about him.
Yeah. So I will do it. I'll take him. And I know it's tough. 5'9", 165. That's the big red X on Mario Craver right now, and also like kind of a couple bad weeks here. 2 catches for 77 yards, 3 catches for 34 yards the last 2 weeks. It's all slowed down since the Notre Dame game where he went for 200 yards and a touchdown. But the yards per route run is still above 4. He's obviously still a big part of the offense. Granted, what I was talking about earlier, that it seems to have slowed down a bit. But I think those big games are still in there. Like we're still going to see more of those this season. Probably not a 200-yard game, but definitely 100-yard games. He's definitely going to score some more touchdowns. He's just he's from what we've seen so far, he deserves to at least be drafted in the first round, albeit at the 112. I think there's a few running backs that I probably was expecting to take here because I figured Craver was going to be gone at this point in time, but I can't say that any of the guys that we've taken before the 112 here didn't deserve to be a first round pick either. So I think we got a good list so far, but I will let Craver be mentioned here at least.
Honestly, I completely forgot about Craver. He is so high in Debbie Beth that I don't even know or I basically I skipped over him saying I'm going to go back to him later, and then I forgot that I was going back to him later. So I do now understand why you guys were saying your jaws hit the floor. I was like I was sitting here going like who am I missing? Who I'm looking through, but I needed to scroll up because I was not high enough, and that was why. I actually kind of love it though, especially for the articles purposes, because this might be more realistic of where like he would probably end up. This might be more realistic of where you guys feel comfortable doing it, and it's not me because I feel like I'm always going to be the Craver lover. I'm always going to be the Craver guy that's like putting my stamp on and blah blah blah, and then maybe the listeners don't necessarily understand where he would actually go. So I kind of actually I love that it worked out this way. I don't love that you took Craver. I don't love that I did not. But I kind of love that it worked out this way. Once again, especially for the articles purposes, and for the listeners, so that they can actually kind of understand where maybe it was more realistic, for everyone else at least. Compared to where I'm just like, yeah, he's just the dude's a stud. The dude's an absolute stud.
John is just kicking himself for not taking Craver at 103 earlier and just getting it over with instead of
I
CJ
mean,
Carr.
I mean, honestly, like I would absolutely have, had I remembered. At the very least, I would absolutely have taken him over Nick Marsh. As much as I like Marsh, I would have taken Craver over Marsh. I would have taken Craver over saying. I'm not necessarily like I took Cam Coleman. I'm not saying I would take Craver over Cam Coleman. I think even technically, all right, Craver is ahead of Cam Coleman in Devy Beth, but I don't know that I would, when it's all said and done, that I would take Craver over Coleman. And, obviously that would probably go more towards draft capital, more towards landing spot, things like that. Where they're basically in the same tier or very similar. So then my next pick was Nick Marsh. I would have taken him there. So maybe I'm taking him at the 109, something like that. And he goes with the 112. So it's not like it's that different, but I'm definitely willing to take him a little bit ahead of you guys.
Fair enough. I think I don't really have much to add, but for me, the hardest part about taking him earlier in this round is just how little he is. if he was 6 feet tall, yeah, I would have had him probably before Cam Coleman. I probably would have taken him before Bryant Wesco, just based on the injury news. But it is what it is. He's 5'9". He's a slot receiver. It's just not somebody you want to take with one of your top 5 picks.
Yeah, we also just watched Devontae Smith, the guy, the Slim Reaper, who everyone was worried was too small, too skinny for the NFL. We just watched him go over 183 yards at a tutty in this past game. So, not necessarily saying that they're exact player or anything like that, but I really don't care about his size. The dude's a stud. He's shown big playability. He's shown that he can work in the slot. He can work on the outside. He's shown that he can really do it all, regardless of his size. And so I love the pick here. But enough about Mario Craver. Were there any honorable mentions before we get out of here that you're like, you know what, I didn't take him, but I was really, really contemplating taking this guy?
I have 4. I'll rattle them off real quick. From the running backs, Cameron Dickey, Jaden Baugh, and Quan Lacey. I think probably not first-round guys, but these are guys that you would probably be seeing taking in the early second. And then a tight end that I would, assuming this is a tight end premium league, which I think most of that's what we're playing. The tight end that I would probably be leaning towards is Trey'Dez Green from LSU.
Okay.
I like those suggestions. I would also add Caden Durham at LSU.
Aaron's making up new players here. He's just making up his own team, in Madden.
Yeah, right. Durham, he's had an underwhelming season, and he really flashed some big time play ability as a true freshman, even being banged up with some sort of foot injury. I don't know if he's also banged up this season, if it's just a LSU offense issue. Maybe he's put on some bad weight. it could be a combination of those things. Durham has not been nearly as efficient, but I think the talent is there for a big time bounce back. The athleticism is absolutely there, and he has enough size. So think of him as a slightly bigger Isaac Brown, and when he's right, he's just as explosive and athletic as Isaac Brown, or at least close to that type of athlete. But obviously, Keenum Durham is not where he needs to be right now. So he's still a favorite of mine, but he's not worthy of being taken in the first round with how his 2025 has gone thus far. Same thing with DJ Legway. I mean, Legway's been worse, right, at Florida. He's been really pitiful. If you're going off of traits, he could be the next Anthony Richardson kind of thing. Maybe he transfers out. Maybe a good coach actually ends up at Florida now that they've officially fired Napier. I don't know what's going to happen there. But DJ Legway, just a very talented guy, needs to be mentioned with the honorable mentions, even if he's not drafted, of course, this early.
Maybe it's because my heart hurts as a Florida fan or whatever, but I'm 100% out on Lagway. I think like the 180 that he would have to do to truly become like what I would consider an NFL viable QB would just be almost like unprecedented, like we just something we've never seen before. And I mean, he's not like that far down the ranks, but it's just I feel like once you hit that 4% interception rate, and like I said at the beginning of the year, like he has to fix it. He has not even come close to fixing it. So like now we're saying, oh, going into his third year, he has to fix it. So I'm like, no, I can't do it. And honestly, I'm not like a self hater or anything like that, but I'm not a Jaden Baugh fan either. I watch him and he just looks so damn slow. I mean, I don't know what it is. Like people like act like he's this like amazing running back, and I'm watching him as a Gator fan, wanting him to do well, and I'm just like, holy crap! Like people talk about like Audric Estime as a plotter or something like that. Like Jaden Baugh looks like Audric Estime, look like Devin Achane.
Yeah, Baugh's a little bit of a plotter just because he put on all that weight. I mean, he didn't really need to coming out of high school. He was explosive. He was versatile. He was a good receiving option, and then he put on like 30 pounds. It's like,
I think
wow.
he actually lost. He lost a lot of weight this year though.
This offseason,
didn't he?
He
Because
might have.
I want to say he was up to 240 last year, and then this year I think he actually dropped down to 225. And so I was expecting the opposite. I mean, like you can look it up. You can challenge me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah.
I was, and that's the thing. Looking at him, he actually looks athletic now. He looks like he should be athletic until he actually touches the ball, and then you go, where's the athleticism there, dude? Come on now, come on, go.
Yeah, he might have lost some weight, but he's still at 231. So I mean,
Okay,
he's still
231.
listed as a very very much a big boy compared to. I'll have to go back to my notes, but he was like 200 pounds coming out of high school, like as a senior. I'm
Wow.
like, that's a lot of weight, and that's understandably why he hasn't been more explosive. But he's still very functional to defend that mention as a player and very powerful. So if he can just get everything reined in and fine tuned, he could be like a Katron Allen or better type of player for sure.
Yeah, it's weird. Like his big time run rate is above 7.5%, but his breakaway yards per attempt is like just over, not even 1.5, which doesn't really add up. It means like yes, he's breaking 15-yard plays, but then he stops. Like there's nothing.
Right.
He's never turning those 15-yard runs into 80-yard runs or even
Right.
50-yard runs. So, but he's getting those, chunk plays. But like once the chunk happens, he's caught, he's tackled or whatever.
I brought up Audric Estime for a reason. Like he really does kind of remind me of Estime, although I honestly believe that Estime was a better runner. But he really kind of reminds me of him, and it's exactly what you said. Some players just have that burst and have that ability. Estime had one of the best burst scores in his draft class, but he didn't have the high end speed, and that's probably going to be the same thing with Baugh, especially if he stays around that weight, 230, 240, whatever. You're probably looking at a guy who's going to have a great burst score, so you can get 8 yards. Can you get 20 yards? Can you get 40 yards? Can you do that? And that's the thing where especially like I was the biggest Estimate fan, and it has not worked out at all. Although he's at New Orleans now, they just lost Kendrick Miller. I don't want to be that guy, but maybe. So I think, yeah, I don't hate him as a call out, but I really need to see him do something very similar to what Aaron was saying with uh, oh crap, who's the guy from Penn State? I can't think of his name.
Oh, like a Katron Allen.
Katron
Or,
Allen, yeah.
or he,
I need him to take that next step in his third year, possibly lose a little bit of weight, and work on the athleticism and do that in his third year. And then I'm like, okay, I'm all in now. But like I haven't seen that happen yet.
yeah, he's on the Emmett Johnson trajectory
Yeah.
if he can continue to improve year after year. So not necessarily like a big time playmaker, but can be functional for sure.
Absolutely. I'm sitting here looking at it. I think you guys named basically all the players, and honestly, like not to say there's no other players that I care about or anything like that, in this class. But for as much of the 2027 class gets like pumped up and everything, you would think we would have 40 names that we would sit here and go, we got to get all these names into the first round, or like, or at least honorable mentions or whatever. And yet, we essentially named what, like maybe 16 players, or something around there. So I don't know that it's necessarily like, I'm not hating on the class at all. There's obviously very high in talent, and there's players that I love to death. But I don't know that's necessarily the, like, oh my god, it's the godsend of the class that's gonna fix everyone's team or whatever that everyone's kind of made it out to be either.
Yeah,
That's
I
fair.
mean,
That's fair.
the first round talent is there. We're seeing some guys in the early second round, but I think it's like this with every draft. Like, especially after their second year of playing, you've got like 10 to 16 guys that you're really excited about, and then the rest of the second and third round will fill in next year, and then it'll be like every other draft class.
Yeah, I will say Trades. You had mentioned Trades Green. I kind of like rolled my eyes. I don't know if it actually came through, but I probably should not have done that. So I will apologize now. He is actually kind of standing out now. I know he just had a big game. I think that was probably his biggest game, or one of them. Um, and there, that's not even saying much because it's a tight end, and so and I push tight ends up as much as possible in Devy. Beth, I give them a little bump, but he is standing out. He's getting up there where he should be. So he is technically the tight end one in the 2027 class as of right now. So I will give you your credit, and I
Thank you.
apologize for any eye rolls that may have come through when you said the name Trades Green.
I appreciate it.
All right, well, that's enough of that. Hopefully, you guys appreciated this. Hopefully, I know it made my job easier for going and writing an article that's due in less than an hour and a half, and so I know it made my life easier. Hopefully, you guys appreciate it, and just get an understanding of what's happening in the 2027 class. Those picks that you're possibly trading for now, and things like that. As your dynasty and Devy leagues and things are getting to the midpoint. You're sitting there going, okay, well, what am I doing? Am I playing for the future? Am I contending? Am I sending this first away? Am I trading, for it? That kind of thing. At least you kind of have an idea of who you might be trading for, or who you might be trading away by making those decisions and that kind of thing. So we appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully you were able to take something away from this. And I was trying to get back up. It's because I stop sharing. There we go. All right. We don't need to see the draft. Or I guess we should probably go over it really quickly. 101, Jeremiah Smith. 102, Ryan Williams. 103, CJ Carr. 104, Cam Coleman. 105, Bryant Wesco. 106, Ahmad Hardy. 107, Arch Manning. 108, Isaac Brown. 109, Nick Marsh. 110, Julian Sayin, and 111 TJ Moore, and then I got an extra pick at 112, and I took Mario Craver, and so it's a great draft, a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys listening. We will be back in your ears as soon as possible, but for now, we're gonna cash out. See you guys.